Hello, my name is Harry Paticus, and I am the Managing Director and founder of Raft. It's great to speak to you today. So today I'm going to be telling you a little bit about our work, approach, and some top tips as we approach the heating season. Now, Raft is a community interest company, and we are committed to helping schools onto the path to zero carbon by 2030. And we provide deep retrofit services at the estate scale, building scale, and detail scale. But we do that in parallel with community engagement. So we connect with staff and the wider community, parents, guardians, grandparents, all around the school. And our aim is to create a ripple effect of engagement from the work we do with schools out into the community. And then thirdly, we do that in parallel with looking at a zero carbon trajectory towards 2030. So our approach is to help make schools low carbon, and this is done through fabric and services. So here we're showing two air source heat pumps, but before they go in, we have thoroughly retrofitted the building. At the same time, we want to make schools healthy and comfortable. And here you can see mechanical ventilation with heat recovery system in a school that is now providing excellent air quality to the children. And then finally, we want to help schools become climate resilient. And the two great risks are overheating and flood risk. And so here there's an image of a small rain garden, a sustainable urban drainage scheme, where we will put some planting and trees, and we'll be collecting rainwater that falls on this particular school. At the same time, it will actually cool down the environment and the playground. So on to the top tips. So the first top tip is to consider using the classroom sensors that the DFE have already sent out to track temperature in classrooms. We think that this can then help to test turning thermostats down so that you can start to explore whether you can reduce the temperature of the heating season, of the heating system in the school, just by 1 or 2 degrees, and this could lead to considerable savings in energy. So secondly, we're keen to encourage you to monitor the gas and electricity usage by going around to the various meters around the school. And there really can be up to 5, 6, 7 meters in some schools. So it is a bit of a pain to collect. But I think if it can be put onto a kind of weekly rhythm of collection and then tabulation in spreadsheets and then presenting, that can be a really good way to tune into the type of energy use and pattern that you have at the school. So it's really important to check lighting timers for both internal and external lights. Really important to check whether they're all needed. In this particular new build school, these external lights have been on all day and all night, apparently for the last 2 years. That's just how it was set up, and it was never looked at. So it's also really important to check heating and hot water timers. And that needs a little bit of work to set up the timing correctly. It's also important to check that the frost settings are correct. We do have some stories of schools keeping the whole school at 24 degrees throughout the whole of the Christmas holidays, just through fear of frost damage to pipework and resulting flooding. An unfounded fear, and obviously if the frost settings can be set up correctly, then that can be entirely avoided and a huge amount of energy and money can be saved. So we think it's a fantastic idea to get children involved in energy auditing. And here we have children with clipboards and lots of schedules, and they're going around. And in this particular case, they were recording all the devices that were on and were using electricity at this point in time. So I think using their amazing powers of observation, you can actually harness their energy to gain a greater understanding of the building. So a very easy one to do is to check the temperatures on radiators and to see whether there are any cold patches. Generally speaking, if there are cold patches at the top, then the radiators need the air bleeding out of them. And if there are large cold patches at the bottom, there can often be sludge in the system. So it's definitely worth checking all the radiators. And what you really want to see is a more even spread of heat across radiators so that you get a much better distribution of heat into the rooms where it's needed, rather than it continuing to circulate around the pipework. So believe it or not, there is a radiator in this picture. In this particular case, the radiator has been covered by a radiator cover, but also lots of storage. And really, radiators need to radiate. I would say at least a couple of feet would be good to allow the heat to escape from the radiator and actually get to the spaces it's needed to. So sometimes appliances are left on, and perhaps the worst offenders are the continuous boiling water appliances, such as this one over the sink. And in this particular case, I found this one on over the whole, basically boiling, clicking on and off throughout the whole of the half-term period. So I think it's really sensible to look for all the appliances that can be turned off during holiday seasons. So comfort in classrooms can be really improved by understanding hot and cold surfaces. When it's 0 degrees outside and with a solid wall such as this, those surfaces, those tiles can actually be very cold, and sitting next to them, or in this case, right next to them, can actually really make your body feel a lot cooler. It will actually suck heat away from your face. At the other extreme, the desk to the right is right next to a radiator that could well be belting the heat out, and you could really start to feel quite uncomfortable and drowsy. So we would really suggest, if the classroom allows it, to actually think very carefully about where children are sitting and to perhaps pull them away from either cold windows or cold walls, or on the opposite, very hot radiators. So we've heard a number of stories about kitchen staff coming in early in the morning, turning on all the ovens and turning on the extraction system. Sometimes apparently due to regulations, but sometimes just because they're cold and the ovens have gone on. And we think that there can actually be some savings by managing a little bit more carefully the types of appliances and when they're turned on in the kitchen. So a little bit of work can be done to actually try and understand how they are, what kind of appliance use is done in the early morning. Often buildings have holes in them. They have air leakage, and when it's very windy, that you can actually get a lot of cold air entering the building, and then the warm air will be being extracted on the opposite side of the building, and then obviously the heating will have to turn up in order to compensate for the drop in temperature. So actually checking for excessive air leakage can save significant amounts of energy. In this case, you can see daylight in a roof that really shouldn't have any light in it at all, apart from the artificial lights on the ceiling. That light you can see at the end is just a giant hole in what should be a warm roof space. Sometimes recent building work hasn't actually been properly executed. This is a scheme that had building control sign off, and basically no insulation had been installed in the ceiling. I managed to track down the drawings for this, and it did show 300 millimeters of insulation in between the rafters, but also over all the steel beams. So it really is worth going to check whether works have been carried out correctly. It's also worth tidying up insulation. In this particular case, insulation had been installed, but it had been moved by electricians. And it really is worth going up into loft spaces and tidying up insulation wherever you can. Keeping walls dry means keeping walls warmer. Basically, wet walls lose a lot more heat, and leaking gutters, damp pipes, hoppers really can make you lose more heat, and it can also lead to damp problems. So we strongly recommend repairing these as quickly as you can. Likewise, solving damp problems on walls internally can also save energy. In this case, there's a damp problem that's been persistent for many, many years, and it keeps returning, and it just is never addressed as a real problem. This needs a damp specialist to look at it and come up with a remedial solution to reduce all the damp coming through the wall. So finally, just want to share a very quick planning framework. This shows sort of early stages of having a vision towards 2030 in a series of steps running through to achieving 2030 ambitions. Okay, well, thank you very much, and I hope those tips were helpful, and look forward to hearing whether you managed to carry any of them out on your properties.